My wife joined a vegan cult and almost sacrificed my dog to prove her loyalty. I kicked her out and never looked back. 6 months later, she texted me for help because her cult turned against her. When me and my wife first met, I thought she was a cool girl. Not in a, oh, she's not like other girls way. More like this girl accepts me and loves me for who I am kind of way. And together, we discovered the art of steak tasting. Sounds weird, I know. But it all started when we were at a pretty fancy steakhouse, one where the waiter brings out a plate of samples to try before you order. Really bougie. We were always foodies at heart. But this was our she-tea. So much so that the very next day, we planned a home steak tasting night. I bought different cuts and blindfolded her, and she had to guess what part of the cow each piece was from. Looking back, maybe we were a little overly obsessed, but I never thought it would be a cause for divorce. But then one day, she told me she was getting tired of eating steak 3 times a day, so she switched, which was fine, until she came home with the news that she had made a new friend called Evelyn. At first, I was extremely surprised because Lauren was usually the introverted type, the type to stay quiet in a room full of chatterboxes. But this also meant I was extremely happy for her. She told me that Evelyn had an amazing figure and she wanted to start working out with her. So I reminded her that I'd love her the exact same regardless, and that was that, or so I thought. Over the next few days, my beloved wife spiraled further and further into becoming a psycho. One day, after returning from a Pilates class with Evelyn, she walked into the living room to find me eating a ribeye steak. Did you know a plant-based diet can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by up to 90%? I almost choked from how hard I was laughing, until I realized that she was not joking. She then continued to tell me Evelyn was teaching her about a new way of living, and we ought to be more like her. Honey, I support you in whatever you do, but I'm gonna keep eating meat. I expected her to be her usual supportive self, or even just nod, but instead she grinned, like I had just challenged her or something. The next morning when I groggily woke up to get my daily dose of AI brainrot reels on Instagram, my eyes widened, because my entire homepage was filled with PETA propaganda. I then realized Lauren must have gone onto my phone while I slept, because she had unfollowed everyone I knew, including my family members, and replaced them all with vegan pages instead. Lauren had always been a pretty impressionable, slightly people-pleasing woman, but I always thought that I would be able to protect her from anyone who tried to take advantage of that. Apparently I was wrong. But instead of waking Lauren up to talk, I kissed her on the forehead and headed to work, because the last thing I wanted was for Evelyn to put a rift between us. I didn't bring it up again until I returned home that evening. Honey, I know you're going through a lot of change right now, but I'd appreciate it if you respected my choice to not. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy, she interrupted. Can't you see I'm literally trying to save your life? A plant-based diet makes it 5 times more likely to live till 100. So I did what I always do when Lauren acts a little wild. I grabbed her hand, looked her in the eyes, and reminded her that it was us versus the problem. But this time, it didn't work. She pushed me off and muttered, "Evelyn was right about you," under her breath before heading to bed. Like, what the F? Over the next few weeks, I had come home to hundreds of dollars worth of fine-cut steaks thrown out, my entire BBQ set sold online for $10, and PETA posters covering every wall of our once-loving home. One night, as I lay awake in bed, I turned over to face the figurine Lauren bought of a pig being hung at a butcher. That was my breaking point. I told her we needed to divorce. "You're right," she said. "I can't be with a murderer." Luckily, it was dark enough that I could roll my eyes without her noticing. It was a 4-week process, one where she ended up spending all her free time with Evelyn. It was during this time that Evelyn got a boyfriend, a non-vegan, meat-loving man. Go figure. The reason I knew this was because I followed her on social media, and she was plastering them everywhere with photos of them barbecuing and eating ribs together. That's when Lauren called me. She was crying and told me she was sorry for being so brainwashed. But at that point, I was already done with women as a whole, and was pretty much ready to spend the rest of my life as a single man, with a fridge full of steaks to keep me company. So I politely declined her offer to get back together. I was honestly ready to never hear from Lauren again, but apparently, she had other plans, because the next day, I came home to a fresh slice of cooked steak on my table. I was confused, and then I saw my dog's collar placed beside it. My heart dropped, and when I called for Max, he never came. That's when I got a text from an unknown number. "Enjoy," it said, with a dog emoji beside it. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the phone. The screen blurred as tears filled my eyes, panic and grief choking me. Max wasn't just a pet, he was family, the loyal companion who'd stayed by my side through the worst days of my divorce. I immediately called Tara, a mutual friend who'd warned me about Evelyn months ago. Tara had tried to tell me something was off about Lauren's new friend, but I'd dismissed her concerns as overprotective. Now I frantically paced my kitchen, waiting for her to pick up, glancing repeatedly at the dining room where that horrible tableau remained untouched. "You're not crazy," were her first words, her voice tight with urgency. No hello, no preamble, just immediate validation of my worst fears. Evelyn does this. She finds vulnerable people, people who crave belonging, who want to feel special. But why? I paced my kitchen, carefully avoiding the steak that seemed to mock me from the table. The linoleum floor felt cold through my socks, grounding me slightly as my world tilted on its axis. Outside, the streetlights were coming on, casting pools of yellow light across my front yard. Control, power. She convinces them they're saving the world, but really, she's just collecting devotees, making them dependent on her approval. Tara's voice cracked. I lost my husband because of her, and my cat. The pain in her voice was raw, even through the phone connection. My blood ran cold. Your cat? I stopped pacing, gripping the counter for support. The granite felt solid under my fingers, something real to hold on to as the conversation ventured into nightmare territory. Evelyn convinced me that pet ownership was exploitation, that I needed to liberate him. She paused, her voice hollow with regret. I released him in a park 30 miles from home. I never saw him again. The admission hung in the air between us, devastating in its simplicity. I gripped the counter, nauseated. The implications crashed over me in waves. But Lauren, the steak, my dog's collar. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, thin and reedy with panic. That's new, Tara admitted, but Evelyn's always escalating. When I was in her group, she was just starting to talk about making sacrifices to prove commitment. The word sacrifices echoed ominously in my mind, conjuring images I couldn't bear to contemplate. I spent that night driving through neighborhoods, parks, and alleys, calling Max's name until my voice gave out. The beam of my flashlight swept across empty playgrounds, beneath parked cars, into drainage ditches. Occasionally I'd see eyes reflecting back, a raccoon, a stray cat, but never Max. The night air grew colder as hours passed, dew forming on the grass in the parks I searched. Sleep-deprived and desperate, I filed a police report the next morning, but Officer Wilson seemed skeptical. The police station buzzed with morning activity, phones ringing, officers chatting, the coffee machine gurgling in the corner. Officer Wilson's desk was cluttered with papers and empty coffee cups, a family photo tucked in the corner showing him with 2 smiling children. Dogs run away all the time, he said, barely glancing at the collar I'd brought as evidence. His pen tapped impatiently against his notepad. And leaving meat on a table isn't technically a crime. His tone suggested I was wasting his time with a domestic dispute, rather than reporting a genuine concern. My ex-wife is in a cult, I insisted, knowing how unhinged I sounded. The fluorescent lights of the police station seemed to intensify, highlighting the bags under my eyes, the tremor in my hands. They're trying to punish me for not conforming to their beliefs. Wilson's expression remained impassive. We'll keep an eye out for your dog. His dismissive tone made it clear he considered this a low priority. He slid a form across the desk for me to sign, a formality, nothing more. That afternoon, I drove past Lauren's new apartment, hoping to confront her. The building was one of those modern complexes with clean lines and lots of glass, sterile and impersonal compared to the cozy home we'd shared. I parked across the street, watching the entrance, rehearsing what I might say if I saw her. I didn't approach. Something about the shrine-like arrangement of candles visible on her balcony made my skin crawl. From my vantage point in the car, I could see her third-floor balcony clearly. What had once been a space for her potted herbs was now arranged like some kind of altar, white candles in varying heights, their flames barely visible in the afternoon sun, surrounding something I couldn't quite make out. Instead, I photographed it with my phone's zoom lens, the image pixelating slightly as I pushed the digital zoom to its limits. When I examined the photo, my stomach dropped. The centerpiece was unmistakably a framed picture of Max. My friendly, goofy Labrador's face smiled out from the center of this disturbing arrangement, surrounded by objects I couldn't identify, but which looked ritualistic in nature. I needed to get inside her apartment to find concrete evidence. The opportunity came through Janice, Lauren's elderly landlady, whom I'd met several times during our marriage. Janice had always liked me. I'd helped her carry groceries and fix her leaky faucet when we visited Lauren's previous apartment. I spun a story about needing important documents Lauren was holding for me. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but desperation overrode my usual honesty. Janice's apartment smelled of potpourri and baking cookies, her walls lined with photos of grandchildren and cross-stitch samplers with inspirational quotes. "She's at one of those protest things," Janice said, peering at me through thick glasses. Her hand trembled slightly as she held her teacup. "Always coming and going at odd hours these days, stomping up and down the stairs at all hours. Not very considerate of an old lady's sleep schedule." She sniffed disapprovingly. With minimal persuasion, she let me in. The hallway to Lauren's apartment felt longer than it should have, the carpet muffling my footsteps as I followed Janice's slow progress. Each step brought a mixture of dread and determination. I needed answers, but feared what I might find. The apartment's transformation was shocking. Every wall displayed graphic slaughterhouse images. The air was thick with incense, a cloying, heavy scent that made my eyes water. The furniture I recognized from our shared home had been rearranged in a way that felt wrong somehow, creating a space that was both familiar and alien. On the dining table sat the shrine I'd glimpsed from outside, candles surrounding Max's photo, alongside dried flowers and a small wooden box containing what appeared to be dog fur. The fur was golden, exactly matching Max's coat. My stomach lurched at the sight, bile rising in my throat. The candle wax had dripped onto the table's surface, creating stalactite-like formations around the base of each candle. A notebook lay open beside the shrine, filled with Lauren's handwriting. Though the words didn't sound like her, Day 7 of my liberation. The sacrifice was necessary to cleanse my spirit of the corruption of flesh. E says the first step is always the hardest, but now I am free from the bonds of complicity. The handwriting was recognizable as Lauren's, but more frantic than her usual neat script. The letters pressed deeply into the paper as if written with unusual force. I photographed everything: the shrine, the notebook entries, the propaganda-covered walls. My hands shook as I tried to capture clear images, the camera on my phone repeatedly warning me to hold still for better quality. The apartment felt suffocating, the incense and underlying smell of something else, something chemical, making me lightheaded. As I prepared to leave, a calendar caught my eye. The coming Friday was circled in red with the notation, "Cleansing Ritual, Bring the Tools." Today was Wednesday. The red circle seemed to pulse in my vision, the implications too horrible to contemplate. Back in my car, I called Tara again. The safety of my vehicle felt like a decontamination chamber after the oppressive atmosphere of Lauren's apartment. I gulped fresh air through the open window, trying to clear my lungs and my head. "A cleansing ritual?" she repeated, alarm evident in her voice. "That's new. When I was involved, we just had confession circles where we'd admit to our crimes against animals." Her voice dropped to a whisper, as though she feared being overheard even now, months removed from Evelyn's influence. What should I do? The police didn't take me seriously. I started my car, eager to put distance between myself and Lauren's apartment building. The engine's familiar rumble provided a small comfort in the midst of this nightmare. "You need more evidence," she advised, "and you need to find others who've escaped Evelyn's influence." The strategy made sense. Strength in numbers, credibility through multiple testimonies. Through social media searches, I identified 3 former followers: Audrey, who now ran a cult survivor blog; Cameron, who'd posted cryptic warnings about vegan extremists; and Ray, whose lengthy post about recovering from ideological manipulation contained thinly veiled references to Evelyn. All 3 responded to my messages with their own horror stories. Audrey had donated her savings to Evelyn's non-existent animal sanctuary. Cameron had been pressured to end his relationship with a non-vegan partner. Ray admitted to vandalizing local businesses that served meat. Their stories poured in through my message inbox, each one confirming my worst fears while adding new dimensions to Evelyn's manipulation tactics. None knew about cleansing rituals, but all expressed the same concern. Evelyn was escalating, becoming more extreme. The pattern was clear. What had started as dietary evangelism had morphed into something much darker, with Evelyn pushing her followers to increasingly radical actions to prove their loyalty. We arranged to meet that evening at a cafe across town. As I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "We know what you're doing. Stop now, or face the consequences." The message appeared on my screen like a digital slap, confirming that someone was monitoring my activities. Through my window, I spotted an unfamiliar car parked across the street, someone watching my house. The vehicle, a nondescript gray sedan, had tinted windows that prevented me from seeing the driver clearly. But the intent was obvious: surveillance, intimidation. I slipped out the back door and cut through neighboring yards to avoid detection. The evening air was cool against my face as I ducked between houses, staying in shadows, feeling ridiculous, yet terrified at the same time. My heart pounded with each fence I hopped, each yard I crossed, expecting confrontation at any moment. At the cafe, Audrey, Cameron, and Ray were waiting, ordinary-looking people whose lives had been derailed by Evelyn's manipulation. The coffee shop buzzed with normal evening activity: students with laptops, couples on dates, friends catching up after work. Our grim conversation felt wildly out of place amid the mundane comfort of espresso machines and pastry displays. "So you're the latest casualty," Audrey said sympathetically. "I'm sorry about your dog." She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with nervous hands that constantly adjusted her glasses or rearranged her coffee cup. "We don't know for sure what happened to him," I insisted, clinging to hope despite the evidence. The alternative was too painful to accept. The coffee in front of me grew cold, untouched. "Evelyn's been getting more extreme," Cameron warned, lowering his voice. He glanced around the cafe nervously, as though expecting to see Evelyn's followers at the next table. "My friend who's still in the group says she's talking about direct action now." His finger traced an anxious pattern in a sugar spill on the table. "We need to stop her," I said firmly. "Not just for Max, but for Lauren and anyone else she's controlling." The determination in my voice surprised even me. Somewhere between fear and grief, I'd found resolve. We formulated a plan. Audrey would pretend interest in rejoining the group to gather intelligence. Cameron would monitor social media for clues about the cleansing ritual. Ray would help me set up surveillance on Evelyn's house. The cafe's ambient noise provided cover for our plotting, our heads bent together over the table like conspirators in an old spy movie. As I walked to my car afterward, I noticed the same vehicle from earlier now parked across from the cafe. The gray sedan idled at the curb, engine running, headlights off. The driver made no attempt to hide their surveillance, a deliberate intimidation tactic. I took a circuitous route home, making random turns until I lost my tail. The city streets provided cover. I'd duck into a store, exit through the back, double back on side streets. Eventually, I felt confident I'd shaken my pursuer. When I finally arrived, my front door stood slightly ajar, heart pounding, I pushed it open. The house was silent, the air inside still and undisturbed. Nothing seemed disturbed at first glance, until I noticed all my photos of Max were missing, removed from frames and albums. The empty frames remained, a ghostly reminder of what had been taken. On my kitchen table sat a small vial of red liquid with a note, blood for blood. The handwriting wasn't Lauren's. It was more angular, aggressive. The vial gleamed under my kitchen lights, its contents thick and dark. I backed out immediately and called the police. This time, Officers Wilson and Sato responded. They walked through my house, bagging the vial as evidence. Officer Sato was younger, more attentive than her partner, her dark eyes missing nothing as she surveyed my home. This still doesn't prove your ex-wife did anything to your dog, Wilson said, skepticism evident in his tone. He stood in my living room, thumbs hooked in his belt, looking bored rather than concerned. Someone broke into my home and left a threatening message, I exclaimed, frustration boiling over. Isn't that enough? My voice echoed in the now empty house, the spaces where Max's photos had been seeming to mock me. Officer Sato examined the photos I'd taken at Lauren's apartment, the shrine, the disturbing notebook entries. This is concerning, she admitted. But strange beliefs and private writings aren't illegal. Her tone was gentler than Wilson's, but the message was the same. They needed more to act. What about this cleansing ritual scheduled for tomorrow night? I pressed. Doesn't that sound ominous? I pointed to the calendar photo, the red circle around Friday's date seeming to pulse with menace. Wilson sighed. We can do a welfare check on your ex-wife, but beyond that, he let the sentence hang, the implication clear. Their hands were tied until an actual crime occurred. After they left, I checked into a motel under a false name, paying cash. I couldn't stay in my house, not after someone had invaded my space so easily. The motel room was generic and impersonal. Beige walls, floral bedspread, laminate furniture, but it felt safer than my violated home. Ray called with alarming news. I accessed their private forum. They're planning something at your house tomorrow night. Something about cleansing the source of corruption. His voice crackled with static over the poor motel Wi-Fi connection. At my house? I repeated, stunned. I paced the small motel room, the carpet rough beneath my bare feet. What exactly are they planning? It's not clear, but there are messages about bringing purification tools and wearing protective clothing. The implications were ominous. Whatever they planned, they were preparing for something messy. The next day crawled by in a haze of anxiety. By evening, we were positioned near my house. Ray and I in my car down the street, Audrey and Cameron in another vehicle around the corner. The neighborhood was quiet, most houses dark or with just a few lights on as residents settled in for the night. I'd called in an anonymous tip to the police about suspicious activity planned at my address. Officer Sato had promised to have a patrol car drive by periodically, though she couldn't guarantee constant surveillance without more concrete evidence. At 11:30 p.m., a van pulled up in front of my house. 5 dark-clad figures emerged, carrying backpacks. The streetlight illuminated them briefly as they moved from the van to my front door. Even from a distance, I recognized Lauren and Evelyn among them. Lauren's movement seemed hesitant compared to Evelyn's confident stride. They're here, I whispered into my phone. Police? Audrey asked from her position around the corner. No sign yet. The night felt too quiet, too still, as if holding its breath. We watched as the group entered my house. Minutes later, flickering firelight appeared in my living room window. The orange glow danced behind my curtains, casting eerie shadows. They're burning something, I gasped, already moving. Call 911 again. I couldn't wait any longer. Whatever was happening in my house, I needed to stop it. I sprinted toward my house, Ray close behind. The night air was cool against my face, the sound of our footsteps seeming unnaturally loud in the quiet neighborhood. Through the window, I could see them forming a circle in my living room, around what appeared to be a small fire in a metal container. Lauren was reading from a piece of paper, while Evelyn sprinkled something into the flames. I burst through the front door. Stop! The word exploded from me, echoing in the room. 5 shocked faces turned toward me. Lauren dropped her paper, mouth agape. Evelyn's expression shifted quickly from surprise to anger. What are you doing in my house? I demanded, trying to see what was burning. The acrid smell of smoke filled the room, mixed with something chemical I couldn't identify. Evelyn recovered first, her face twisting into a sneer. The murderer returns to the scene of his crimes. Her voice dripped with contempt, her eyes gleaming with a fervor that seemed almost unhinged. What are you talking about? You broke into my house. I looked around at the group. Besides Lauren and Evelyn, there were 2 women and 1 man, all dressed in black, all watching me with varying degrees of hostility and confusion. We're cleansing this place of death, a young man beside Evelyn declared. Your karma is stained with blood. He stood tall, shoulders back, clearly trying to project authority, though his voice wavered slightly. I looked directly at Lauren, searching for any trace of the woman I'd married. Lauren, what happened to Max? Please, just tell me. I tried to keep my voice steady, to connect with whatever remained of the person I'd once loved. Something flickered in her eyes, doubt, perhaps guilt. But before she could speak, Evelyn stepped between us. Don't talk to him. He's trying to manipulate you, just like he always has. She placed a protective hand on Lauren's shoulder, positioning herself as a shield. I never manipulated Lauren, I said, addressing the entire group. But Evelyn has been manipulating all of you. Ask yourselves why she's dating a meat-eater while condemning everyone else for the same thing. I threw the accusation like a grenade into their midst, watching their reactions carefully. Confusion spread across their faces. One woman glanced uncertainly at Evelyn. What's he talking about? She was younger than the others, perhaps college-aged, her face still showing traces of innocence despite the zealotry. He's lying, Evelyn snapped, trying to divide us, but her voice had lost some of its confidence, a note of defensiveness creeping in. Show them your Instagram, I challenged. Show them the pictures of you and your boyfriend barbecuing. I took a step forward, emboldened by the doubt I could see spreading through the group. Lauren's eyes widened. What? She turned to Evelyn, confusion, and the first hints of betrayal crossing her face. Check her phone, I pressed. She's been living a double life. The fire continued to crackle in its container, casting dancing shadows across all our faces. Evelyn's face hardened. This is ridiculous. We're here for the ritual, not to listen to his desperate lies. She tried to regain control, her voice taking on that commanding tone that had likely drawn so many followers to her, but doubt had been planted. The young man was eyeing Evelyn suspiciously now. Is it true? He asked, his certainty visibly wavering. Jason, don't listen to him, Evelyn warned. Remember what we discussed? Non-believers will always try to disrupt our work. She reached for his arm, but he pulled away slightly. What about Max? I asked again, looking directly at Lauren. Please, just tell me what happened to my dog. The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't. Her voice broke, and for the first time, I saw genuine emotion break through the zealot's mask she'd been wearing. Lauren, don't! Evelyn hissed. Her control was slipping, panic beginning to show at the edges of her carefully constructed persona. Ray appeared in the doorway behind me. The police are coming. I can hear sirens. His announcement sent a ripple of alarm through the group. Panic flashed across Evelyn's face. We need to go, now. She began gathering their materials, shoving items into a backpack with frantic movements. Not until I get answers, I said, blocking the doorway. The sirens were audible now, growing closer. Evelyn's expression turned ugly. Move, or we'll make you move. The threat hung in the air between us, her eyes cold and calculating. The standoff might have escalated if not for the flash of police lights outside. Evelyn shoved past me, the others following quickly. Only Lauren hesitated, looking back with an unreadable expression before running after them. The police arrived seconds later, but the group had already scattered. Officers Wilson and Sato found Ray and me standing in my living room, staring at the small ceremonial fire they'd left behind. In the container was a collar, not Max's but one I'd never seen before, and what appeared to be chunks of raw meat. What is this? Officer Sato asked, looking disturbed. She crouched beside the metal container, careful not to touch anything. I think it's symbolic, Ray explained. The meat represents what they see as his crimes, eating animals. The collar is symbolic too. He spoke with the authority of someone who'd been inside the group, who understood their twisted logic. So they weren't actually burning your dog's remains, Wilson clarified, looking relieved. He'd clearly begun to take my concerns more seriously, now that he'd seen evidence of their bizarre behavior. I don't think so, I said, though uncertainty still gnawed at me. But I still don't know where Max is. The police took statements and evidence from the break-in, promising to follow up with Lauren and the others. As I was cleaning up the mess they'd left behind, my phone rang, an unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. The house felt empty and violated, the lingering smell of smoke a reminder of how close I'd come to. What? Exactly? I still wasn't sure what their ritual had been intended to accomplish. It's me. Lauren's voice was barely audible. I can't talk long. Evelyn thinks I'm in the bathroom. She sounded frightened, her words coming in a rushed whisper. Lauren, where's Max? Please, I need to know. I gripped the phone tightly, holding my breath as I waited for her answer. A long pause, then a shaky breath. He's alive. I couldn't go through with it. Evelyn wanted me to, as a final test of loyalty, but I couldn't. Her voice broke on the last word, genuine emotion bleeding through. Relief flooded through me so intensely I had to sit down. Where is he? Where's Max? I sank onto the couch, legs suddenly unable to support me. I gave him to my sister in Sacramento. Told her you and I couldn't keep him with our new apartment's pet policy. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Evelyn said it would free me, but it just made everything worse. Lauren, you need to get away from her. She's manipulating you. I tried to keep my voice gentle despite the anger and relief warring within me. I know, she whispered. I'm starting to see that now. The things she's been asking us to do. And then I saw those pictures of her with her boyfriend, eating meat, after everything she told us. The disillusionment in her voice was palpable. Let me help you, I offered, surprising myself with the sincerity of my concern. Despite everything, I couldn't help worrying about her safety. I can't leave yet. She watches us too closely, but I'm going to try. I heard voices in the background. I have to go. Wait, how do I get Max back? I stood up again, suddenly energized by the knowledge that my dog was alive. I'll text you my sister's address. Just don't tell anyone I called you, especially not the police. The fear in her voice was evident. She was genuinely afraid of Evelyn. The next morning, I drove to Sacramento, a 6-hour round trip that felt like nothing compared to the joy of seeing Max again. The highway stretched before me, the miles melting away as I anticipated our reunion. I played his favorite radio station, imagining his head bobbing along as he always did when certain songs came on. Lauren's sister Sasha was confused but cooperative, especially after I explained what had been happening. Her apartment was small but cozy, with colorful artwork on the walls and plants on every available surface. Nothing like the sterile, shrine-like space Lauren now inhabited. Lauren's been different lately, she admitted as Max jumped all over me, whining with happiness. His whole body wiggled with excitement, his tail a golden blur as he tried to lick every inch of my face. Distant, intense. I was worried about her, but she wouldn't talk to me. She's being manipulated, I explained, scratching behind Max's ears. His fur was soft and clean. Sasha had clearly taken good care of him, but I think she's starting to see the truth. Back home, with Max safely by my side, I gathered everything we had on Evelyn, the photos, testimonies from former members, evidence of break-ins and harassment. Max stayed close, following me from room to room as I worked, occasionally nudging my hand for reassurance. I created a private online group with Audrey, Cameron, Ray, and now Sasha, planning our next move. We needed to confront Evelyn publicly, with all her victims present, show her followers the truth about their leader. The strategy took shape over video calls and encrypted messages, each of us contributing pieces to the puzzle. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Lauren texted that Evelyn was planning a recruitment rally downtown. "She's desperate for new followers," Lauren wrote. "After what happened at your house, some people are asking questions, leaving." The message gave me hope that Evelyn's hold was already weakening. The day of the rally arrived with Max refusing to leave my side, following me from room to room as if afraid I'd disappear. He even waited outside the shower, his nose pressed against the glass door, fogging it with his breath. His separation anxiety was understandable after what he'd been through. "We're going to fix this, buddy," I promised, giving him an extra treat before finalizing our plan. I left him with a trusted neighbor, knowing he'd be safe there while I confronted Evelyn. Audrey had printed flyers with screenshots of Evelyn's hypocritical social media posts. Cameron had collected testimonials from former members. Ray had even obtained audio recordings of Evelyn contradicting herself in private meetings versus public speeches. But our secret weapon was Lauren, who'd texted that morning, "I'm ready to speak out. I can't live like this anymore." We arrived early at Westside Park, positioning ourselves strategically around the small stage Evelyn had set up. The park was busy with normal weekend activities, children playing, couples walking, seniors feeding ducks at the pond. Our group blended in, appearing to be just more park-goers enjoying the sunny day. By 11:45, about 30 people had gathered. I recognized some faces from the night of the cleansing ritual. Others were new, potential recruits looking curious, but uncertain. Lauren stood near the front, pale but determined. She acknowledged me with the slightest nod. Evelyn arrived in dramatic fashion, dressed all in white and carrying a megaphone. Her entrance was clearly calculated for maximum impact. The pure white clothing, the confident stride, the way she positioned herself center stage with the sun behind her, creating an almost halo-like effect. "Friends, allies, warriors for justice," she began, her voice booming across the park. "We gathered today to spread the message of compassion and liberation." Her charisma was undeniable. She knew how to work a crowd, how to modulate her voice for emotional impact. As she launched into her speech, Audrey and Cameron began circulating through the crowd, quietly distributing our flyers. I watched people's expressions change as they examined the photos. Evelyn smiling with her boyfriend over plates of ribs, eating burgers, wearing leather boots. Confusion rippled through the audience like a stone dropped in still water. A young woman raised her hand, interrupting Evelyn mid-sentence. "Is this you, eating meat?" She held up the flyer, her face showing genuine confusion rather than accusation. Evelyn's smile faltered momentarily before she recovered. "That's obviously photoshopped. My enemies will stop at nothing to discredit our movement." She tried to laugh it off, but the damage was done. Doubt had been planted. "It's not photoshopped," I called out, stepping forward. The crowd parted slightly, creating a clear line between Evelyn and me. "Your boyfriend Jason posted these himself on his public Instagram." My voice carried across the suddenly quiet gathering. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Evelyn's eyes narrowed when she spotted me. "This man," she spat, pointing accusingly, "is a known animal abuser who couldn't handle his wife's spiritual awakening." Her attempt to redirect attention to me was transparent. "That's not true," Lauren said, her voice quiet but clear as she stepped forward. The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to her. "He never abused animals. You told me to steal his dog and," her voice broke, "and do horrible things to prove my loyalty." The crowd went silent. All eyes were on Lauren now. The power of her testimony was undeniable. Here was Evelyn's star pupil, publicly breaking ranks. "You told us to cut ties with anyone who wouldn't convert," she continued, gaining strength. "You told us to vandalize businesses, to threaten people. You said it was for the animals, but it was always about control." Her voice grew steadier with each word, as if the act of speaking truth was liberating her. "Lauren is clearly disturbed," Evelyn said dismissively, but panic flickered in her eyes. "She's been manipulated by her ex-husband." "We've all been manipulated by you," Ray called out, joining us. "I gave you thousands of dollars for an animal sanctuary that never existed." He stepped forward, standing beside Lauren in solidarity. "You convinced me to break up with my boyfriend because he wasn't pure enough," Cameron added, "while you were secretly dating a meat-eater." Another ally joined our line, facing Evelyn across the increasingly restless crowd. One by one, former followers spoke up. The crowd's mood shifted from confusion to anger. Evelyn's current followers looked bewildered, unsure who to believe. Some were already drifting away from the edges of the gathering, unwilling to be associated with what was quickly becoming a public reckoning. "These are all lies," Evelyn shouted, but her voice had lost its authoritative edge. "They're trying to destroy everything we've built." Her composure was cracking, the carefully constructed persona beginning to crumble. "What have we built, Evelyn?" Lauren asked. "A cult, where you're the only one who doesn't have to follow the rules?" The question hung in the air, devastating in its simplicity. Evelyn's face contorted with rage. She lunged at Lauren, grabbing her arm. "You ungrateful little—" Her mask had slipped completely now, revealing the anger and control issues beneath. I moved instinctively, placing myself between them. "Don't touch her." My voice was low but firm, my stance protective rather than aggressive. Evelyn released Lauren and backed away, looking around wildly as her followers continued to disperse. Some were checking Jason's Instagram for themselves, their phones out, heads bent together as they confirmed the truth of our claims. "This isn't over," she hissed, before storming off, a few loyal followers trailing behind her. Her white clothing seemed less pure now, more like a costume that had failed to serve its purpose. The rally dissolved into small groups of confused people, discussing what they'd just witnessed. Lauren stood beside me, trembling slightly. The confrontation had clearly taken a toll on her, but there was also relief in her expression, the relief of finally breaking free. "You okay?" I asked. A gentle breeze rustled through the park, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and distant barbecues. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry. For everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to do this." Her voice was quiet but steady, no longer carrying that strange zealot's edge I'd grown to dread. "Max is safe," I told her. "That's what matters." And it was true. In that moment, the past hurts seemed less important than the fact that we'd both escaped Evelyn's manipulation, that Max was home and safe. "I never would have hurt him," she whispered. When Evelyn suggested it, that's when I started to see how twisted everything had become, but I was too scared to leave. Her admission hung between us, not quite an excuse, but an explanation of sorts. Audrey approached us, putting a gentle hand on Lauren's shoulder. "We've all been there. The important thing is, you got out." The solidarity between former victims was powerful. They understood each other's experiences in a way I never fully could. Over the next days, the fallout was intense. Former members continued to come forward with stories about Evelyn's manipulation. Her social media accounts were flooded with questions about her hypocrisy. The movement she'd built began crumbling around her. Lauren stayed with her sister in Sacramento, getting therapy and rebuilding her life away from Evelyn's influence. We talked occasionally, brief, awkward conversations that always ended with her apologizing again. I wasn't ready to forgive completely, but I was glad she was getting help. Evelyn didn't go quietly. First came the smear campaign, posts claiming I was an abusive husband, that Lauren was mentally unstable, that everyone speaking against her was lying. When that failed, she tried intimidation. One night, I found all my car tires slashed. Another day, someone threw red paint on my front door. Each time, I documented everything and filed police reports. Officer Sato took special interest in the case, increasing patrols around my neighborhood. "We're building a case," she assured me. "Harassment, breaking and entering, vandalism. We just need to catch her in the act." Her determination was reassuring. Finally, someone in authority was taking the threat seriously. They got their chance 2 weeks after the rally. My newly installed security camera caught Evelyn trying to break into my backyard at 2 a.m. The police arrived before she could get in, catching her with spray paint and a knife. The footage was damning. Evelyn, clearly recognizable despite her hood, attempting to force my back door, tools of vandalism in hand. The legal process was frustratingly slow. Evelyn hired an expensive lawyer who portrayed her as a passionate activist, being persecuted for her beliefs. But the evidence was overwhelming. The break-ins, harassment, testimonies from multiple former followers. She eventually pled guilty to reduced charges of harassment and attempted breaking and entering, receiving probation and a restraining order preventing her from contacting me, Lauren, or any others who had spoken out. It wasn't the justice I'd hoped for, but her influence was broken. Her remaining followers drifted away as more of her hypocrisy came to light. The movement she'd built collapsed under the weight of her exposed contradictions. 3 months later, I was finally starting to feel normal again. Max and I had settled into a comfortable routine. My house no longer felt tainted by what had happened there. I'd repainted the walls, rearranged furniture, reclaimed the space as my own. Max's photos were back in their frames, his toys scattered across the living room floor where they belonged. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a woman I met at the dog park who instantly bonded with Max. She was a veterinary technician named Melissa, who loved animals but had no interest in policing other people's diets. Our conversations were easy, normal, refreshingly free of ideology. Then Lauren called. "I'm moving back to town," she said. "I got a job offer I couldn't refuse. I wanted you to hear it from me." Her voice sounded healthier, more like the Lauren I'd first met and fallen in love with. "Oh," I said, unsure how to respond. "That's good. How are you doing?" Max perked up at the sound of her voice on speakerphone, his head tilting in that curious way dogs have. "Better. Therapy helps. So does being away from all that." She paused. "How's Max?" The question was tentative, as if she wasn't sure she had the right to ask. "He's great. Back to his old self." I reached down to scratch behind his ears, and he leaned into my touch, tail thumping against the floor. "I'm glad." Another pause. "Listen, I know things can never go back to how they were between us. I don't expect that, but I hope someday you can forgive me." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. I looked at Max, snoozing peacefully on his bed. For weeks after getting him back, he'd had nightmares, whimpering in his sleep, but those had stopped. He'd healed. Maybe we all could. "I'm working on it," I told her honestly. "It'll take time." The words felt right, not a false promise of instant forgiveness, but an acknowledgement that healing was possible. "I understand. Thank you for not hating me." The relief in her voice was palpable, even through the phone connection. A week later, I ran into Lauren at the grocery store. She looked healthier, less gaunt, her eyes clearer. Her hair was back to its natural color, no longer the severe style she'd adopted under Evelyn's influence. She wore a simple blue sweater and jeans, looking more like the woman I'd married, "Hi," she said, clearly as surprised as I was. We stood awkwardly in the produce section, shopping carts creating a barrier between us. "Hey," I gestured to her shopping cart. "I see you're back to eating meat." A package of chicken breasts sat atop her other groceries, alongside vegetables and fruits. A normal, balanced selection. She gave a small smile. "In moderation, my therapist says black and white thinking isn't healthy." She adjusted her grip on the cart handle, a nervous gesture. "Smart therapist." I nodded, appreciating the wisdom in that approach. We stood there awkwardly until she asked, "How's Max?" Her voice softened at his name, genuine affection evident. "He's good, still the same old goofball." I smiled, thinking of how he'd greeted me that morning, bringing me his favorite toy as a gift. "I miss him," she admitted. "I know I have no right to, but I do." She looked down, guilt crossing her features. I hesitated, then made a decision I hadn't planned on. "Would you like to see him sometime? Maybe at the dog park?" He'd probably like that. The offer surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise her. Her eyes widened. "Really? You'd be okay with that?" Hope and disbelief mingled in her expression. "I think so. We could try anyway." It felt like the right step. Cautious, but forward-moving. "I'd like that," she said softly. Her smile was genuine, reminiscent of the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago. We exchanged numbers. She had a new phone, new number, part of her fresh start, and made tentative plans for the weekend. As I watched her walk away, I realized something. I didn't hate her anymore. I probably never would fully understand how she could have gotten so lost in Evelyn's web that she'd consider hurting Max, but I believed her when she said she couldn't go through with it. People make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones. The important thing was learning from them. The following Saturday, I brought Max to the dog park. Lauren was already there, sitting nervously on a bench. When Max saw her, he froze for a second, then raced toward her, tail wagging furiously. She knelt down, letting him lick her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. The reunion was emotional. Max clearly remembered her, clearly still cared for her despite everything. I hung back, giving them their moment. Whatever happened between me and Lauren in the future, whether we managed to build some kind of friendship or simply remained civil exes, I knew we'd both learned something valuable from this whole mess. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people deserve second chances. And sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, but moving on and living well. As for steak, I still enjoy it occasionally. But these days, I'm a bit more diverse in my diet. Life's too short to get obsessed with just one thing, whether it's meat or the absence of it. Balance is key. That, and keeping your dog close and your ex-wife's manipulative friends far, far away.